think even with the likes of Claude, they're really good at building personas in the first place. So kind of you can almost reverse engineer a product or a service into a persona. So just saying, here's the details of, if you haven't got one, it depends where you're starting from. I don't know whether that'd be more marketing or sales actually, but if you have details, and this is the thing again, exactly like you just said, you need to give it the right data. It can analyze and synthesize, but people assume that it has it. You need to give it to them. So giving it information about your service or product in as much detail as you possibly can, and then saying create a persona off the back of this is a really useful one to do. And then following that, you could say, right, okay, now interact with me, now behave as this persona. And you can actually practice conversations so ChatGPT or Claude can take on the role of your persona. It can become a conversation, a realistic conversation, and you can go back and forth. So you can rehearse kind of more difficult sales or more difficult conversations just generally. I think that works across the board, even outside of sales. I do a lot of stuff with HR, so they're practicing difficult conversations with colleagues and things like that, just to kind of anticipate. But here you can anticipate objections. You can sort of learn about their motivations a little bit more, and you can practice your objection handling. You can have some things ready, and the likes of ChatGPT and Claude are excellent at coming up with. So if you started with your product or service details, you're asking it to build a persona that has the objections in, motivations, a day in the life, whatever it is that you want. Then it can feed that into this interactive conversation. You got to get a really realistic experience. So there's a time I sat with a client who's been working for 20 years in this area, and not this area, in his area, which was data analytics actually, but quite very different from AI. And he knew his ICP just backwards. He knew his persona like inside and out. And we sat there for 3 or 4 hours with just kind of me asking him questions in the same way we just would have done this process manually. And then I turned to ChatGPT and I filled in a couple of details about his service and added his brochure and added a few bits in the website and all that sort of stuff, and said come up with a persona. And the elements of this persona, their challenges, their motivations, their objections, were not just identical, but it suggested things he'd forgotten about. So this one thing took minutes with ChatGPT and it was hours with a human. So those types of things are actually scarily accurate. I think there's a problem with personas generally, that they can always be better. And I think it's a really good way to kind of stress test those as well.
Yeah, I like that. And also, didn't you say that now one of the LLMs has the functionality to practice a call?
Yeah, so you could you can do it with all of the LLMs. So ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Gemini. You can do a text version, but you can on ChatGPT now we have what's called advanced voice mode on the app. So it's not on the actual desktop thing. It's on the app, and it's a scarily human voice. And you can then do exactly the same thing and say, act as this customer. You need to give a bit of a brief, and then you can physically talk back and forth to them as well. So you can practice that call in a whole different dimension.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know there are a couple of other tools that do that as well. But yeah, I like that. Or even if you were, gonna have to have a review call with a client and you wanted to, or maybe you were anticipating that was going to be a bit difficult, you could shoot at that scenario and then have a little practice before you started.
Yeah, and it could be used for training as well. So somebody's new to an area, you could say, right, okay, set it up with the right persona, really challenge them, and then ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you're using to then rate their performance at the end, and they can just build, and that can be helpful for training.